You're just sitting there, not doing anything, and then, out of nowhere, a sharp little blade lands in your chest, left side usually, right where you know your heart is. And the second it hits, you do the thing everyone does. You freeze. You try to take a breath, and the breath makes it worse. A hot needle point digging in deeper the more you fill your lungs. So you go shallow. Tiny sips of air. And somewhere in the back of your head, a quiet voice says the worst possible word. Heart. You know this feeling. And for a few seconds, you genuinely wonder if this is it, if something inside you just broke. Then, just as fast as it came, it lets go. A few careful breaths, and it's gone, like it was never there. Here's what I can tell you before we go a single step further. That stab is almost never your heart. It's not your lungs giving out either. It's something far stranger, hiding in a part of your body that shouldn't be able to hurt at all, because the organ you're so scared for can barely feel pain to begin with. So if it isn't your heart, what is actually stabbing you? Stay with me, because the answer rewrites what that pain even is. That sudden chest stab is common enough that doctors gave it a name. Two, actually. The clinical one is precordial catch syndrome. The older, better one is Texidor's twinge. And almost everyone gets it, usually starting in childhood and hanging around into your 20s and 30s. The pattern is always the same. A sharp stabbing pain, usually on the left side of the chest, near the bottom of the rib cage or just under the nipple. It shows up out of nowhere, usually when you're resting or slouched at a desk. It is laser pointed. You can usually put one finger right on the exact spot, and it has one signature move. Breathing in makes it worse. A full deep breath feels like it's driving the point in deeper, so you take shallow little sips of air until it passes, which it does, all on its own, in anywhere from a few seconds to a couple of minutes. So what is it actually? Doctors aren't 100% certain, and I'll be honest every time we hit a gap like that, but the leading idea is that it's a nerve. One of the small nerves in the wall of your chest gets pinched, squeezed, irritated, a nerve in the lining and the tissue running between your ribs, often by something as dumb as sitting with bad posture. The nerve fires. Your brain gets a pain signal screaming from the exact neighborhood where your heart lives, and it does the sensible thing and panics. But the heart itself is fine. It's sitting there, beating away, completely uninvolved, taking the blame for something happening in the wall around it. And if that sharp, breath-catching, one-finger pain sounds familiar from somewhere else, that's because you felt its cousin. Think about the last time you were running, or even just walking fast after eating, and you got a stitch. That hot stab under your ribs, usually on the right, the one that forces you to slow down and clutch your side. We treat the stitch like a totally separate thing. It isn't. It's the same trick played a little lower down. The proper name for it is exercise-related transient abdominal pain, which is a mouthful, so most researchers just call it ETAP. And for something this common, the science is surprisingly unsettled. A handful of competing theories. But the one that fits best points, once again, at aligning. Your guts aren't just floating loose in there. They're wrapped in a smooth, slippery membrane, and that membrane has two layers. One sheet clings to your organs. The other sheet clings to the inside of your abdominal wall. Normally, they glide against each other with almost no friction, like two panes of wet glass. But then you start moving. Everything's bouncing. Or the membrane dries out a little, and the gliding turns sticky, and the two layers start to rub and tug at each other. And that rubbing irritates the outer sheet, the one attached to your body wall. Same as the chest. So now you've got this exact stab showing up in two completely different places. And once you notice that, the real question is what they've got in common. Hold on to that, because the answer is something almost nobody knows about the organs underneath. Here's the part almost nobody tells you, and it's genuinely strange. Your organs, your lungs, your heart, the surface of your guts are almost completely numb. They can't feel pain the way your skin can. And I mean that literally. A surgeon can cut into the surface of a lung, and the lung does not report it as pain, because that tissue has barely any pain sensors wired into it at all. The same goes for the slick inner lining that hugs your organs. You could poke it and it wouldn't scream. It sounds insane. The most valuable equipment you own, the machinery you literally cannot live without, is the part that can't feel a knife. But the lining one layer further out, the sheet attached to your body wall, is the exact opposite. It's packed with pain nerves. Sharp, fast, pinpoint ones. The same kind wired into your skin. Doctors lean on this split every single day. It's why appendicitis starts as a vague, dull ache you can't quite point to, somewhere in your belly. That early pain is coming from the organ itself, and the organ can only manage a fuzzy, hard-to-place signal. Then the swollen appendix grows. It touches that outer lining. It inflames the wall, and the pain transforms. It turns sharp. It snaps into one exact spot in your lower right. Same problem, two completely different pains, depending on which layer is doing the talking. So your body made a choice. It left the priceless organs numb, and it wired the cheap-looking wrapping around them like a live tripwire. Both pains, the chest twinge and the running stitch, are coming from that hypersensitive outer lining, never from the organ you're actually scared for. You're getting a 5-alarm fire from the wallpaper, while the house behind it feels nothing, which leaves the real question, why on earth would a body be built that way? To get why, you have to stop thinking like a modern person with a hospital down the road and start thinking like an animal that had neither. For almost all of human history, the most dangerous thing that could happen to your body wasn't a sore organ. It was a breach, a tear in the wall, a goring from an animal, a spear, a fall onto something sharp. A wound that punched clean through the body wall and opened up the sealed space where your organs live. Because once that seal was broken, you were in real trouble. Infection flooded in. That space around your organs is meant to stay sealed and clean. And in a world with no antibiotics, a breach killed you, slowly and almost for certain. So evolution had a problem to solve. It had to guard that boundary. It had to make sure you protected that wall at all costs. And the way it did that was to wire the inside of that wall like an alarm cranked to maximum. Make the lining so sensitive that the smallest insult sets it off. A stretch, a rub, a pinched nerve, a flicker of inflammation. Any of it trips an immediate, sharp, impossible to ignore stab. Pain that pins itself to one exact spot so you know precisely where the threat is. And pain that spikes the moment you move or breathe so you're forced to go still and protect the area. That alarm is doing its job perfectly right now. The only problem is it can't tell the difference between a real spear and a slightly pinched nerve from sitting hunched over your phone. It just knows the wall has been touched. And the wall being touched for 10,000 generations meant you might be about to die. So it does the one thing it was ever built to do. It screams, loud and sharp, and right now, just in case. So here's the reframe to take with you. The next time you're sitting still and that little blade lands in your chest and your stomach drops. That stab is not your heart failing. It is almost the opposite. It's the alarm built to protect your heart, your lungs, everything that keeps you alive, firing over a false trigger. It's a security system so committed to keeping you sealed and safe that it would rather terrify you over nothing than risk staying quiet during something real. The fear you feel in that moment is the price of owning an alarm that sensitive. And an alarm that sensitive is the whole reason your ancestors lived long enough to become your ancestors. There's one honest thing I owe you before we finish. This is the harmless version, the quick twinge that comes and goes in seconds and pins to one tiny spot. Real heart trouble usually doesn't feel like that. It tends to be a heavy, crushing pressure. It spreads, it lasts, it comes with sweating, with breathlessness, and it doesn't care whether you hold still. That is a different signal, and that one you take seriously. But the random pinpoint stab that vanishes as fast as it arrived, that's the wrapping, not the engine. So the next time it happens, breathe through it, slow and careful, and know what you're really feeling. Not your heart breaking down, just the oldest guard you own, standing watch over the parts that matter most, doing its job a little too well in a body that barely needs it anymore. It isn't a warning that something is wrong. Most of the time it's proof that the thing built to catch what's wrong is still wide awake.